Another data structure in R is the matrix. Matrices are objects in which the elements are arranged in a 2D array. Basically, we form a rectangular arrangement of numbers in rows and columns. Matrices are also considered homogeneous data structures, meaning that we can only have numeric or character elements at a time. In this video, we'll practice how to create a matrix, adding elements to a matrix, and lastly, see how to add attributes. Creating a matrix is pretty straightforward. We use the matrix function, okay, and it takes the following arguments. The first argument is data. By default is NA, but here we want to create a vector. nRow just defines how many rows we want to create in our matrix. Same with ncol, the number of columns we want to create that will populate our rectangle. By row here just tells our the design in which we want to fill these elements vector in our rectangle. And lastly here, dim names just allows us to create labels for our columns and our rows. The first method is to use the matrix function. So let's go ahead and create. So we pass here our data. It's a form of vector. We tell that we want to create 2 rows and 3 columns. So our objects, we call it x1. And here's the output. We can use the following functions to see the to actually, or rather, we can use these functions on the matrix, right? So to see examine the internal structure, use the structure. You can see we have integers and they're made up of 6 elements. The dimension for rectangle, 2 rows and 3 columns. nRow, we return the number of rows, it's 2. You can see here, 2. Number of columns, we have 3, okay? We can also construct a matrix made up of characters, right? Recall the predefined variable letters. We just want to extract the first 6 letters, right? We use the square brackets here. And then we populate that in a 2x3 rectangle. We call that a matrix. You can see we have it here. We can also see the internal structure. It's made up of a data type character, 2 rows, 1 to 2, and 3 columns, 1 to 3, made up of these elements. Okay. We'll see how to add attributes, but again, it just acts as a dimension, dim, the dimension, 2 rows and 3 columns. Second method, we use the column bind, cbind function, and the row bind, which goes by this function. Okay. So let's create 2 vectors, y1 and y2. Remember, they have to be of equal length. Okay. So to bind that by column, we just pass our 2 objects here. Let's see how it looks like. You can see here we have y1 first column, y2 second column. How about if you want to bind this by row? Okay, we just use the row bind, or rather r bind, and you can see the difference here. So we construct our rectangle from left to right. Here was top, bottom. Okay. The second item here is to see how to add onto a matrix, right? So let's say, suppose we wanted to add a new column, right? So first of all, let's create a new object here that, and we call it Z1, okay? So let's go ahead and do that. So we have a matrix here that has the following vectors, y1 or elements and y2. So if we wanted to add a new vector, or rather a new column to this matrix Z1, how do we go about that? So let's first of all add a new column. So let me say we want to create elements 7 to 9, create that. We use the column bind here. So we want to add another new column here. So we use cbind, and we first argument is the data, our existing matrix here, and then we want to bind this to our existing matrix. Okay, and then this is what happens. Okay, and that's the output. Simple as that. What if we wanted to add a new row? Same thing. So we pass in here our existing data, separate that by a comma, and then we want to add maybe, let's say, the following values, 2.2 and maybe 4.2. Okay, remember, they have to be of equal length. We run that, and you can see we have added the another row here, 2.2 and 4.2. Okay. So, and then another thing that has just happened, R converts everything here into decimal. Okay. And lastly here, how do we add attributes to a matrix? Okay, or matrices, right? So to do that, let's first of all create another matrix and call it Z2. Okay. And we can also inspect the matrix here. You can see it's a 3 by 3. So adding attributes, what that means, we can add probably labels for our columns and rows. You can see here, we don't have any labels, right? So to do that, we can use the following function. We can add labels to a row using this function called row names, right? So what we do here, we're just telling R, so this, we want to add row names to our existing matrix called Z2. What do we want to add? We want to add the following labels. So row 1 has to match to row 1 in Z2, and so on and so forth. Row 2 will be attached as a label to the second row here, and so on and so forth. So when we run that, we can see now Z2 has the following rows. Okay. What if we wanted to add column names? The same thing, only that we use the column names, call names, and we do the same thing. Okay. So I could run that. You can see now we have a nice, we have some nice labels for both the columns and the rows. Another way to see the output really quick, we could just separate that back a semicolon, Z2, and it will just output everything in one line. Just a pro tip there. Alternatively, we can add the rows and columns, rather labels to our rows and columns using this function. Okay, dim names, right? So let's go ahead and do that. So we are telling R that we want to add some dimensions, some labels into our existing object here, which is a matrix, right? But we want to access the first here, we're just saying by row. So the integer here 1 just means the row. Okay. And remember, we're using square brackets here. Okay. And we want to add the following label. So I just changed it to 0. So 0, 1, 0, 2, just see the effect here. Let's go ahead and run that. You can see now we've actually added labels on the row. How did we do that? We just call this as 1. So this will be 1, okay, meaning row. If we wanted to add the column labels, we can use the square brackets, and we can pass their numeric 2. Remember, the dim names here just tells R that we want to add or attach labels to our existing matrix by accessing the list name, the second list name here, okay, by using this number here. 2 just means columns. Okay. Another thing you can do is add comments, right? So how do we add comments? We use this function called comment, and we can say, oh, okay, we want to insert some comment to our existing matrix, and we can just type some text. And when we look at the attributes now, you can see the attributes now, it's a bit more informative. You can see it's a 3 by 3 rectangle. It has the following labels for rows. You can see here, the first element in our list, rows. Then the second element in our list is considered as the columns. We have that. And lastly, we have a comment. Okay. That's it on how to create a matrix. We've seen how to add attributes, which basically is just labels. And lastly, we've seen how to add a column and a row, okay, to an existing matrix. And also seen how to add a comment.